In today's video, we're taking a look at some Toronto Maple Leafs trade rumors. As we know, the Leafs, since they've been eliminated from the playoffs, have had a lot of speculation of their future. We're taking a look at 3 different articles suggesting plans they could be looking at for the offseason, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As you can see, we're again live on location, visiting beautiful Nova Scotia here with a beautiful view of the Bay of Fundy right behind me. If you've never visited this place, I highly recommend you do. Some terrific scenery, a great way to relax, enjoy some great seafood, and I highly recommend this. Right now I'm currently in the Digby area, right along the Bay of Fundy here. So as we're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs today, we're taking a look at 3 different articles. First up is an article from Sportsnet and author Luke Fox examining some potential moves, and one move he looks at is the future of goaltender Freddie Andersen. Now, of course, there's already been some talk around Andersen's future with the Leafs. Of course, he's entering the final year of his contract with Toronto, so there's certainly a lot of talk and speculation. Of course, he's been a good goalie for them since he arrived from Anaheim, but obviously Andersen has not come up big in the playoffs for the Leafs, and they certainly continue to look for some answers in that regard. Now, of course, a few days ago, we talked about the possibility of a Leafs-Penguins trade involving Matt Murray, and we're going to touch a little bit on that a little bit further into this video as well. Obviously, there are some more ties between these 2 teams that I wanted to look at. But for right now, in regards to Fox's commentary here on Andersen, a lot of what he's suggesting that they're not going to go down the UFA road of finding a replacement for Freddie Andersen. Obviously, looking at what's out there, he feels goalies that are either wouldn't really be, applicable to help the Leafs, or they'd be too expensive. Looking at guys like Robin Leonard, obviously Corey Crawford, Braden Holtby, just to name a few that are out there. Jacob Markstrom of Vancouver, if he's not re-signed, could be an interesting option for the Leafs, but clearly those guys are going to be demanding some big money, or he felt that might be either a little bit old or past their prime for getting a longer term contract, which is the same debate over why you may not want to keep Freddie Andersen. Obviously, he's, like I said, he's been a great goalie. He's going to be 31 when his contract's up, so do you want to get into another long-term deal with a goaltender heading into that age past his prime years, when he has not helped you get much playoff success as of right now? They have not won a playoff series under this new regime here with all the young talent that they've built around over the past 4 or 5 seasons. So obviously, like I said, his future is in question with the Leafs. Like I said, we're going into the final year of his contract. For many players, there's always question marks. But as we get into this article a little further, essentially Fox feels that there's a pretty good chance that the Leafs stick with Freddie for another season and evaluate next season to see what he can do, because clearly like I said, there's a lack of options out there. But obviously, to bring in a goalie by trade, I think there's obviously they'd have to unload Freddie, and I'm just not sure that there's a perfect swap out there amongst teams to make that happen. To me, as we discussed before, a Freddie Andersen for Matt Murray trade doesn't really make sense. I can see Murray going to the Leafs and not making sense considering his age, what he's accomplished so far in his young career, the ties to Kyle Dubas, but I just don't see him being swapped directly for Freddie Andersen. I think they would have to be separate moves. I'm not sure why the Penguins would want that when they have Tristan Jarry, and a big part of moving Murray would be for cost-cutting measures as well. So clearly, that to me just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I guess we'll see what happens when the Leafs and it comes to Freddie Andersen, but I think there's a pretty good chance that unless they trade for Murray, which is certainly not a high chance. I mean, it's hard to say. Would not be surprised to see those teams have discussions, but we'll have to see what happens. But I think right now, at least based on what we know, I think there's a decent odds that the Leafs go into next season with Freddie, let the final year of his contract play out before they have to really make a decision term on their goaltending situation. Now, we're also going to take a look at some other articles here. One from the Toronto Star, Kevin McGran, and a mailbag type article looking at some moves that he feels that the Leafs could make. One of the questions he was posed to was looking at a potential trade involving the forward group to shore up their blue line, and he feels that it's pretty much a given that William Nylander has to be the one to go to make that happen. A forward group for what they have for value, who could potentially be moved, that Nylander makes the most sense given the fact that his contract's the most reasonable amongst the big 4. We're not looking at $10-11 million, which are tougher to move. Willie certainly got a lot of criticism for the contract when it was first signed, but he certainly bounced back last year, and I think right now his contract is pretty valuable. He certainly had a pretty good season as well. He can play center, even though I do think he's a better winger, but he is, somewhat versatile in that sense, so there is some flexibility there. And obviously, in Nylander's case, he's probably the most valuable trade chip they have in their forward group. So clearly he could possibly be moved in order to help, bring up other areas of the team, especially on the blue line. I mean, the Leafs have been linked to several other blue liners over the last number of months, really, as there's been so much talk about what they're going to do for their blue line. But really, if you take a look at what Nylander could bring the Leafs, I think they'd have a really good chance to bring them back something substantial with Nylander. Of course, we've talked about other forwards as well, mostly lower level forwards like Kapanen, Janssen, Kerfoot, and one or more of those guys could possibly be traded too. But this article basically suggests that Nylander's their most valuable trade chip, and I do concur with that sentiment. I would not be completely shocked if they explored moving Marner, but based on his contract, and I just think that there's a less likelihood that they would really want to do that. I don't think Dubas really doesn't want to move Nylander either. I don't want to come off that impression. I don't think Kyle Dubas wants to trade any of his big four. I don't think there's a guarantee by any means that he wants to move or will move one of the big four. But based on this article here, McGran feels that they pretty much have to move Nylander if they really want to focus on getting the blue line help that they so desperately need, given where his contract is, that he's their most valuable trade chip. So if the Leafs did move one of their top big four forwards, does it make sense to you? Do you concur with the feeling here that Nylander is the most likely one to go? And if he is, then give me your mock trades of where he could go and what he could bring back. I mean, clearly we're looking at teams that, maybe like an Anaheim for Josh Manson. You're looking at maybe like Minnesota for a guy like a Brodin or a Dumba, something to that effect. But obviously, in that case, you're swapping out salary for salary. You're not going to save a ton of money, but the Leafs could basically try to save money in other ways. Like this year's going to be a major cap crunch for the Leafs and many other teams because of the lack of cap increase. But next year is going to be even worse when they have to either re-sign or replace Freddie Andersen, when that's going to come to a head, because they can get one more year out of it. But obviously, in the case of Morgan Rielly, he's going to need a new contract too, and he's done so well that Rielly is going to be getting a pretty substantial raise. With all the guys in the forward group making so much money, he's going to want to be paid fairly as well. So clearly, they're going to have to make some moves. They can only delay so much, but that certainly is a possibility here that a guy like Nylander goes as a kind of a preparation for the major, even worse cap crunch that's going to come not this year, but next. Now, there's also another article I want to look at and reference here from the Toronto Star, looking at some moves as well, where they've indicated that the Penguins have inquired on the availability of Kasperi Kapanen. Now, of course, in case you don't remember, Kapanen's a player the Penguins are obviously quite familiar with, as he originally was in the Penguins organization and went to Toronto in the Phil Kessel trade. So obviously he's been around for some time. I mean, he is a valuable commodity. He's a great skater. I really don't think Kasperi had a very good playoff. I think he kind of disappeared, in my opinion. Didn't really see a ton of the speed and the offensive prowess that he's shown before. I mean, obviously, when he had a chance to play with Matthews when Nylander was out with the contract dispute, he really excelled. And really, ever since that, he's come back and he's played lower in the lineup. He has contributed. He's done all right. But I do think that given a different role on a different team with more opportunity, I think there's more to be had there. I think he has some untapped potential. I think he can be versatile and play special teams. And I wouldn't be shocked to find out that the Penguins did inquire, that this is a true rumor that did take place. But now, what would it take for the Penguins to acquire Kapanen from Toronto? Well, if you look at what Toronto needs, they clearly need help on the blue line, and they need it mostly on the right side. So unless you're offering a really good defenseman, I'm probably not making that trade. But what do the Penguins have in regards to a right-shot defenseman? Well, you've got Chris Letang, you got John Marino. I don't see the Penguins moving Marino. I think he's got a bright future. There has been some other rumors we've discussed lately on Letang, including something we touched on in yesterday's video. So there's been a lot of talk around that player. So, obviously, like we talked about before with the Murray contract and the possibility of Pittsburgh moving Murray, Freddie Andersen, like maybe there could be a larger scale trade between these teams here if a player like Andersen and Kapanen were involved on the Toronto side, with the Pittsburgh side, maybe including a defenseman like Letang. Of course, he has a partial no trade, and his contract would certainly make things complicated. So it would be really tough to do. So that would not be easy. Pittsburgh would likely have to retain, or there would have to be some other shuffling of salary. You just couldn't do it straight up here with Letang for Kapanen. There's just no way that would happen that way, clearly. But if you had Letang and Murray going one way, Kapanen, and obviously it'd have to be something else substantial going back the other way, or a third party involved or something. But to a degree, they kind of have what each other needs for parts, but just from the money complicates things so much that it's pretty unlikely that it would be able to take place. But it's fun to have thoughts about the potential blockbuster trade between Pittsburgh and Toronto, like we saw before just a few years back here with Phil Kessel. I mean, that was pretty substantial. Could they hook up on another trade again? Anything is possible, but it's going to be really hard to pull off with the salary cap and the flat cap being where it is for the next few years. But both these teams want to get back in the mix here, try to contend for a Stanley Cup, and they might need each other's help if they want to have any shot at making that happen. Obviously, there will be other trading partners around the league, but clearly, you know, it's like a lot of trades are going to be tough to do. I know we talk a lot about different trades that could take place, but flat salary cap is not going to be great for the trade market. So let me know what you think, what moves we're going to see out of Toronto. Of course, Toronto media loves to talk about the Leafs and all the different moves they might make. And so, of course, we want to give our 2 cents here, kind of see what everybody thinks. I know there's a lot of Leaf fans that watch the channel. So I'd love to know what you think in the comments below, and we can discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.